Присылайте ваши вопросы заранее на наш email info@rosa.fm или во время передачи по СМС 347 460 0877.
Добрый день всем, кто сейчас настроен на радио USA в передаче «Самая светлая передача всей недели». Передача называется «Thank God it's Tuesday». С этими словами я встаю каждый вторник, потому что я знаю, что нам предстоит общение с самым мудрым, великим раввином нашего времени, раввином Манисом Фридманом. И вопрос, который я бы хотела сегодня с ним поднять, это вопрос искупления. Что-то он у всех на устах, очень многих. Вот только что мы побывали на таком большом русском шабатоне, там было 1500 человек, и очень много говорили именно вот об этом. И не только там об этом говорят всюду. Вот сейчас, например, и русская Пасха на носу, и тоже вопрос искупления там стоит довольно остро. Так что вот что именно значит искупление? Что это такое? Хотелось бы это получше понять, и вот с этим вопросом я обращаюсь к нашему замечательному, умнейшему, мудрейшему раввину Манису Фридману. Rabbi Manis Friedman, thank God it's Tuesday. So happy to be able to speak with you today. And as I just told our audience, our listeners, that we have spent last Shabbaton last Shabbat at the Russian-speaking Shabbaton, which is like an annual event. It gathers about 1,500 people. And we spoke a lot about very different topics. And one of the main topics is redemption. Everybody is speaking about redemption. And it's not just the Jewish people who are speaking about redemption. The great Redeemer, we had Sunday was Easter. That's about redemption. The Russian Orthodox Church is having their Passover soon as well. So the big word is redemption. The word of the day is redemption. But what exactly is redemption is, of course, something we would like to hear from you. Hopefully you can set us straight on this one as well.
What is redemption?
Yeah. What does it really mean?
Well, the first question really is, what do we need to be redeemed from? What is wrong with how we are that we need to be redeemed? If you're talking about slavery, yeah, well, of course. People shouldn't be slaves. Even people who want to be slaves shouldn't be slaves. There's no mystery there. So why the need for redemption? Everybody needs to be redeemed. We're not all slaves. In fact, we haven't been slaves in a long time. We almost forgot how. What do we need to be redeemed from? That's a very important question. Because how do you know whether you are redeemed if you don't even know what you're being redeemed from? You could tell yourself you're redeemed and you're not. You can tell yourself you're not and you are. How would you know? And that's why saying we need to be redeemed is like starting in the middle of a story. Tell me the beginning. Start from the beginning. How did I get messed up that I need to be redeemed? And who messed me up? It's a very important question. Also, what do you consider messed up? Who agrees or who admits that he's messed up? A person who can't function? That doesn't take any brilliance. If you can't function, you got a problem. That's not everybody. You got yourself into trouble, now you got to get yourself out of trouble. Is that redemption? So what are we talking about? So to get right to the point, to cut through all the clutter, there are many issues, many dependencies, many addictions in which we are enslaved. In fact, the human spirit, and this is something we really need to think about and know about it, and we did talk about it during the Shabbat. The real enslavement is that the human spirit feels enslaved by being human. The humanness, the condition in which we are created, you're created a human being, and in some way that enslaves me, because I don't want to be a human being. So I don't want to be a mensch. I want to be something more. That's what we mean by purpose of life. Why am I here? Why are you here? Just be what you are. Stop kvetching. If you're a man, be a man. If you're a woman, be a woman. You're Jewish, it's Jewish. You're alive, you're alive. What is this issue with why and what for and what is the purpose? Why can't we just settle down and be content? The answer is very simple, because we are enslaved by the limitations of the human condition, and we don't like it. So before we get enslaved by money, by a job, by a career, in a relationship, a codependency, before we get enslaved to substances, to gambling, to sex, we're already enslaved. So that explains, like, the origins of enslavement. It's not one person enslaving another. That's the lowest level. It deteriorates to that. Because I feel enslaved, I can therefore be enslaved by another person. But if I never felt enslaved in myself, nobody else could enslave me. Or in different words, if I wasn't addicted to myself, I would never be addicted to anything outside myself. So this is what the Torah is trying to tell us. God created us human so that we can become something more. We are not a finished product. That's the meaning of, in 6 days, God created everything to do something with it. Everything that was created needs to become something more. So God created a perfect potential. It's our job to live up to that potential, to bring out that potential. And when we don't, we feel enslaved. And we don't know what to blame it on. So we blame it on society, on the government, on the neighborhood, on the boss, on the teacher, and on the parent. Everyone is enslaving me. Get to the root of the problem. You feel enslaved from the minute you're born. And there's only one way to fix that. And that's by yourself. So the ideal, perfect, utopian situation would be when we are no longer enslaved by our humanness. How will that happen? What will we become that is more than human? Partners with God in creation. Until then, we are enslaved, and we need to be redeemed.
Rabbi Friedman, but how do we do this? We're still here. We're bound by certain laws, standards that are here, that in order for us just to feed our family, we have to abide by those standards that have been set, not by somebody in this society. And how can we get away from it? How can we stop it? How can we not care about making money? All the things that we have named that confined us. We thought we could be free if we have enough money. We are freer this way, but it has the opposite effect. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of all these things that actually enslaved us even more than redeemed us. So how do we get away from all these societal standards and be able to be God's partners?
So this is how it worked. First, God took us out of Egypt, then he gave us the Torah. There's a reason for that. Why does slavery come before the Torah? Taking us out of Egypt meant making us free. When you're free, then you can do whatever you need to do and whatever it takes to accomplish your goal. But when you're enslaved by the goal, well, you're not going to accomplish it. You won't affect the world will affect you. You're not going to make money, the money's going to make you miserable or whatever, arrogant. So the first thing is we need to be free. It's a little bit, I'm not sure it's a perfect example, but a carpenter, an expert carpenter, he takes a look at a pile of wood and he sees it very differently than the non-carpenter. The non-carpenter looks at a pile of lumber and there's no way this is ever going to become a piece of furniture. There's no way. It's a hard, unbending, unyielding piece of wood. How will this ever become beautiful? The artist doesn't see that at all. He's not intimidated. A sculptor is not intimidated by a slab of marble. He sees the statue. He's free because he's not intimidated. He's free because he knows he's the artist. He's the master, not the slab, not the 2x4. The same is true with any art. You see an empty canvas with a bunch of paint. How is this ever going to become a painting? How will this come alive? How will this be beautiful? The artist is not intimidated. In other words, the material doesn't scare the artist or the master. Or the first thing we need to know is we are the artists. We're not at war with the materials, with the substances. We're the masters of the substances. If you come to it with that attitude, like a confident teacher, the confident teacher never says, how in the world am I going to teach these kids? They don't want to learn. What do you mean they don't want to? Give them to me. I'll get them interested. What's the problem? If you feel like a teacher. If it's just a difficult task, Yes, you're intimidated. So what does the Torah tell us? First, be free. You don't have to be enslaved. You don't have to be intimidated by nature and by limitations and by... Here's a world that you can make into whatever you want. Once you have that attitude, oh, now you can do everything. To a lesser degree, of course, coming from Europe to America, from a Jewish perspective, Judaism in Europe was incredible. Very impressive. Awesome. But it was destroyed. Where to go from there? The Rebbe, coming from Ukraine, Russia, had to choose. What's going to be the new home for godliness, for Torah, for Judaism, for Jews? There's a big world. You can go anywhere. The Rebbe chooses America. And for those who know, the reputation that America had back then was that it's the last place you want to go. It's completely godless. There's never going to be any Judaism, Yiddishkeit in America. No way. The Rebbe chooses America. Not because he likes a good challenge. We're talking about the previous Rebbe. Is because we had to get ready for Mashiach. In order to be ready for Mashiach, you first have to be free from everything else. How can you move on to a greater, much more impressive level of godliness when you're not free? When you feel oppressed, when you feel limited, intimidated, crippled. And that's what we felt. So the Rebbe said, you know what, let's go to America. Americans don't feel limited. Americans don't feel crippled. Americans don't feel, well, you know, in the good days. The America that used to be. Not only don't Americans feel limited by the borders of the country, Americans think the whole world is theirs. Because the American dollar can buy anything, anywhere. So Americans are cosmopolitan. We go anywhere in the world proudly telling the world that we are Americans. And the Rebbe felt, you know, Jews need to get a little of that spirit. We need to feel free. So when freedom seemed to be a contradiction to religiosity, the Rebbe felt, no, freedom is a necessary introduction. It's like, let's get out of Mitzrayim again, and now approach Torah with a whole different, higher, deeper commitment and insight. Hasidic Judaism, Chabad Judaism. Much deeper, much higher, much greater, much more universal. So where can you do that? In a place of freedom. Freedom is not scary. No, people can do whatever they want. Good. An artist can do whatever he wants with that canvas. He can do whatever he wants with that piece of marble. And the carpenter can build anything he wants with that wood. But the freedom is a bad thing? We never stop thanking God for taking us out of Egypt. Every day of the year, 3 times a day, for taking us out of Egypt. We can't get over it. Which means we're free. And freedom is a bad thing? No. So we're going to celebrate Pesach again. You know, somebody asked Sharansky, do you believe in the Exodus? A non-Jewish company was filming, and they interviewed him, and they asked him, do you believe in the Exodus? He says, I am the Exodus. I was enslaved, and I came out. So yeah, leaving Europe is like coming out of Mitzrayim. Now we got to get out of the slavery of America.
Yeah. So, Rabbi Fridman, exactly. This freedoms. It's for sure. Freedom kind of is, as far as what you just said, equals fearlessness. So kind of no fear, complete trust, complete confidence. That is something that helps us get out of our limitations, as far as, to put it in the simple language, I guess.
But look at this horrible thing that developed. It's so ironic. We became enslaved by freedom. Because we don't know what our purpose is, for which freedom is very helpful, to help us attain our purpose. We don't know what our purpose is, but we are free. But what do? Free to do what? Freedom of religion became freedom from religion. We are free to do anything. It is so bad. Look at what has happened. You say to a person, you're a woman, and they're offended. I'm non-binary. Don't tell me I'm a woman. I am free, so I don't have to be a woman. I'm free, I don't have to be a man. I'm free, I don't have to be anything. So I'm crazy. Literally crazy. So when freedom itself becomes a dictator, no, you can't be a woman, that's not freedom. You can't be a Jew, that's not freedom. You can't even be a human being, that's not freedom. So your dog and you, no difference. Don't limit me to being a dog. Don't limit me to being a human. Okay, what do you want to be? I don't know. Somebody help me. So freedom itself became a dictator. It's intimidating. You can't be anything because you have to be free. It's killing us. It's literally killing us. So freedom has to be followed. You come out of Egypt, you go to Har Sinai. You can't just sit there being nothing. So from Mitzrayim, you go straight to Har Sinai. And you receive the Torah, you receive your marching orders, you are now free to do this. 613 mitzvahs. Otherwise, you might get enslaved by freedom. That's probably what we mean when we say in the Haggadah on Pesach, if God hadn't taken us, our ancestors, out of Egypt, we and our children and our children's children would be enslaved. That's a pretty big statement. This is 3,000 years later. We would still be enslaved? Maybe this is the meaning. God took us out of Egypt to take us to Har Sinai. If we had come out of Egypt any other way, if we had just gained freedom, we would now be enslaved to the freedom. The miracle of our coming out of Egypt is that we came out with a purpose, with a plan, with an objective. So freedom did not enslave us. Freedom was our tool, not our God. But this is literally the best description of what's going on in America. You can't define yourself, you can't identify yourself, you can't pick a goal and stick to it because you have to be free.
Rabbi Fridman, is this happening only in America or around the world?
Around the world. People are so enslaved by freedom, they're becoming jealous of those countries where there is no freedom. It's so twisted.
Yet, no one is still at a point where they can make a clear decision that this is not what I want. This kind of freedom to be anything, anytime, anywhere, anyhow is not what I want. People are still kind of going towards that. Why?
Simply because they don't have an alternative. No one ever told them what they should be, what they're designed to be, destined to be. So they keep looking. They don't know where to look. So every mishigas that comes along, you can't be straight, you got to be gay. No, you can't be gay, you got to be... What should I be? Well, whatever you are, don't be it. Because you have to be free. It's crazy. It literally drives people to suicide.
It really upsets those who understand what's going on. It's very hard to be a witness to all of these things and seeing things clearly. Rabbi Fridman, another thing that I thought was pretty obvious, but apparently I found out that it's not as obvious as we'd like it to be, and that would be the word galut, exile. When I spoke to people at the Shabbaton regarding that topic, exile, it seems like people are like, why do we have to be in exile? Israel is right there. Just pack your bags, go to Israel, and there's no more exile. So exile does not mean to all people what it should mean. So the question, of course, is what does that really mean? What should it mean? How should people understand exile, which we are in right now?
People living in Israel are not in exile? Okay, let's say a certain fragment of the population, Jewish population, are living in Israel, feeling guilty that they're occupying someone else's land. So are they home or are they homeless? They're certainly in exile. They're not comfortable in their own home. They're not comfortable in their own skin. That's exile. The opposite of exile means to be home. Then there are those people who feel that Israel is their home. But they have to hide in shelters. They have to deal with wars and with terrorists and with attacks and with bloodshed and with bombings. This is your utopian world? A home that is so vulnerable that you have to build in safe rooms and sealed rooms, and it's not your home if you can't live there. You can't go certain places because it's dangerous for Jews. Dangerous for Jews in Israel and you think you're home? It may technically be your home, but you don't own it. Somebody else is dictating where you can walk and where you can drive and where you can live. We are very much in exile. So when we pray for the return to Jerusalem, the prayer is not done yet. We're not there yet. We should be. We should make it our home. But we're not doing that. We're still trying to share our space as if it's not ours. So we need a little guidance, a little direction, a little clarity, moral clarity, Torah clarity. Who is who and what is what, and yeah.
Rabbi Fridman, I want to speak about one more thing today, which is a little bit mystical, but it's happening in less than a week. It's actually happening in exactly 6 days, and everybody's talking about it. And that is the total eclipse of the sun. And it's supposed to pretty much happen only be seen, like realistically be seen here in America, Mexico, and Canada, but mainly in America. And we've been talking about America a lot today. And interestingly enough, apparently it's going to be on the 8th of April, which is the 1st of Nisan, which is exactly when the plague of darkness took place in its original days. And the interesting part is, of course, we are right now in a process of leaving Egypt. We're being in the process of being taken out of Egypt in accordance to our calendar. Passover is exactly 2 weeks after the 1st of Nisan, on the 15th of Nisan. So, and pretty much this year, the calendar, the original events are happening this year exactly as they happened originally in accordance to the Jewish calendar. Does that mean anything at all?
Well, it could get pretty dark and negative about it. The plague of darkness in Egypt was good for the Jews or bad for the Jews?
Good.
There you go. It's a solar eclipse, right?
Yeah.
Which means that the moon is blocking out the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of amazing because the moon is so much smaller. How could a tiny little moon block out the huge sun? The Jewish people are a tiny fraction of the world's population. And we could develop we have developed a huge inferiority complex. There was a rabbi here in Crown Heights. He was tiny. He wasn't a midget, but he was close. Very, very small guy, but amazing guy. So somebody said to him, "How do you feel being among all these tall people?" He says, "I feel like a dime surrounded by nickels." It's such a good answer, right? How does the moon feel compared to the sun? Like a dime compared to a nickel. The fact that the moon, which represents the Jewish people, because our calendar is a lunar. In fact, the first of the month of Nisan is actually our first month. The months begin with Nisan. Whereas the non-Jewish world goes by the solar calendar. So the moon blocking the sun simply means that the Jewish people, being a tiny minority, is still more significant or more powerful than the sun, because without the Jewish people, the sun has no purpose, no direction, no wisdom. So it's a very encouraging and a very empowering experience or event. Even the darkness that it creates is not a negative darkness. It's a sobering darkness. Like what happens when the sun sets? People become more normal.
Do they?
The day is over. Yeah. The day is over. Calm down. Go home. Settle in. Have something to eat. Sit by a fireplace. The night is so much calmer. Or as the Gemara says, night was created so that people would study. You can't work in the fields because it's dark out there. So what do? You read. And I think that's a traditional thing. What did people do after sunset in the early years? They read. They educated themselves. Or you turn inward. So it's a more growing experience. During the day, you're affecting the world. During the night, you affect yourself. So it's a time for romance, relationships, connections, introspection, and education. That's the night. So the darkness simply makes the world go away, right?
Yeah.
When it gets dark, the world disappears. And you're left by yourself, with yourself. That's beautiful. And particularly today, people are a little intimidated or embarrassed. We're so alone. We have no allies anymore. Nobody's on our side. We're alone. We're alone. Is that scary? We've always been alone. We are the moon. We're not the sun. We've always been alone. We're better off alone. We are meant to be alone. And again, the example for it is a teacher in a classroom is outnumbered 20-1, 30-1. Oh, he's so alone, this poor teacher. But what would happen if there were two teachers? Chaos. So yes, we are alone because we're the teacher in a huge classroom. There's nothing wrong with that. So God gives us the focus of the world, which is amazing in itself. Why would the world be focused on Jews? What is this? What do we do to attract so much attention? Tiny little country. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. And this is the whole thing. We have world's attention on us, positive or negative. We still got the attention. And I'm sorry, we know that every day we look 10 hours a day into the phone, basically for one reason, to see if Mashiach is coming, if it's time yet. And I just want to ask you, because of course it's just this it has to happen now. It has to. Everybody is in sync with that. Anybody who understands, at least remotely, what's going on in the world, understand that this is the time. And of course, the question is your opinion. The fact that the calendar, the original calendar, and this year are completely in sync. The fact that we're getting a solar eclipse on the 1st of Nisan, exactly the time where the original darkness happened, and all our holidays are exactly as they happened then, when everything was original. Does that mean, can it possibly mean that this is the time? This is the time for us to be redeemed.
Yeah, it is the time with or without an eclipse. And we don't want it to be exactly the way it was then. I mean, 3,000 years later, we hope we made some progress, and that this is going to be much greater than it was then. So the similarities are nice, but we want something even bigger, better, newer, unprecedented, something that has never happened before, and not negative, not negative. It's not, there are a lot of people who are waiting for the bad guys to get punished, which would feel so good.
Yes, it would.
But that's not a hope or a prayer. The prayer is that there are no more bad guys, because being bad is just ridiculous, and no human being, no matter how low their IQ is, would do anything so ridiculous as be bad. That's the world we want. That's the world we worked for. Is the world ready for that? Is the glass half full? You can get very negative. Oh, the world has never been so messed up. We're the furthest away from Mashiach ever. Not really. Actually, we have the freedom. We just don't know what to do with it. So it seems like we are enslaved by the freedom. Just use it properly, and you're home.
Amazing, Rabbi Fridman. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this clarity on a very, very important topic that apparently a lot of people have very confused. They're confused about it. And we were confused until today. So hopefully everyone who listened to our show today got a lot more clarity on the topic and a lot more inspiration and positivity in their life. And this is what you do for us, for Radio USA and our community weekly. And this is what you do daily for everybody who is looking for wisdom, sanity, inspiration, and positivity. Thank you so, so much for doing everything that you do for us and for the world. And we very much look forward to speaking about it, more positivity a week from today. Thank you.
You know, when people would go to the Rebbe asking for health, for a blessing that they should recover, that they should be healthy, very often the Rebbe would ask them to take on a mitzvah. And something people can be cynical about it and say, the Rebbe is taking advantage. You know, the person is weak, the person is desperate, and the Rebbe is taking advantage, getting him to do a mitzvah. I think the meaning behind it is, you want to be healthy so that you do what? You want to be free so that you can do what? If you don't know what you're going to do when you get free, then you can't handle freedom. If you don't have a purpose for being healthy, that's not healthy. So the Rebbe is saying, make a plan for your healthy future. Just healthy for no reason is not healthy. So don't just be symptom-free. Be healthy enough to do what needs to be done. So start doing a mitzvah. That's like, don't just leave Egypt. Leave it to go to Mount Sinai. That's freedom.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Friedman. I'm very hopeful that the message today came across very clear, and I'm sure it did. And thank you so much for bringing these important messages and being an incredible teacher in our day and age, which we really, really need and really, really appreciate. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you for the microphone.
Thank you. Ну а всем, кто нас сегодня слушал, огромное вам спасибо. Спасибо, что вы тоже ищете правду, хотите подниматься выше, хотите помогать другим делать это же. И спасибо вам всем огромное за это. Вот с этими словами я, Аня Фейгерман, передача Thank God It's Tuesday. Прощаюсь со всеми до следующей недели. Всего доброго.
WWPR